Welcome, everybody, to our first deviation from the homestead build-out, where this time we start to give meaning to the channel's name. Today, we're checking something off the list before it even has a chance to be added to the bucket. It starts with Old Man Winter getting settled into the Midwest, and a couple of economy seats that we endure for a few hours before we transfer planes for the first time. And things start to look a little warmer on the second flight. Another equipment transfer that admittedly is more exciting for me than it is for Alila, and we're moments away from our week of paradise to celebrate our first anniversary. Our arrival is nothing short of postcard perfect, where we get to sip a few drinks and hang out with some of the local wildlife before we settle in for the night and get rested up for tomorrow. Now, tomorrow's sunrise, I think, ends up being an even better view, which came to be a theme of this whole trip, and we start to prep ourselves for a long day in and around the ocean. And when I say in, that's exactly what I mean. Now take one deep breath in. Take another. 3 more. 2. Last one. And here we are, 50 feet below the surface of the sea. And while I've been diving since I was 12, this is Alila's first trip as a certified diver, having completed her Chicagoland quarry dives only about 4 months prior to this adventure. I'm keeping this clip in real time to illustrate just how amazing this bucket list destination is from the very first minute. We're a mere 4 minutes into this dive, with the group collecting and getting their wits about them. In truth, there are only 3 or 4 experienced divers, and the rest are recently minted. Again, only 4 minutes in, and the wildlife already appears. Now, this is a first for me too. I've always wanted to do a shark dive. It was a bucket list item. But I didn't realize just how many of these things we would see over our 4 dives plus our day of snorkeling. And while this really is quite exciting for us, it's only a few more moments before the group starts heading towards our first natural feature of interest, and we must say goodbye to our first encounter. Now, as a quick aside on the background of diving certification, the first step that most people take, especially in the US, is the PADI Open Water Diver Certification. Broadly speaking, it's the 101 teaching you how to work the equipment, the basic do's and don'ts, as well as how to deal with some of the minor problems that might come up. And on paper, the depth limit of this certificate is supposed to be 60 feet. In the real world, and at least on this particular dive, 60 feet doesn't quite get you deep enough for what we're given the option to do. And since I don't have the same hesitation or fear that maybe the average person might, you better believe I'm going to go right on into this cave. Now you might notice that the video at this point is starting to lack a lot of color definition. This is a side effect of how much light is not making it down to this depth, which currently sits about 95 feet. But as we work our way into the tunnel, it's not going to matter because we go from low color to no color, as our only light now exists because of the exit. This is one element of diving that open water training does not cover. And while I expected Alila to opt for going around the cave, I'm shocked and amazed that she followed me right on in. Now, this being our anniversary trip, and due to COVID, effectively our honeymoon, I'm still blown away by the possibilities of future adventures with her. Of course, no sooner do I say that when I find her flirting with the natives. In this case, it's a stage 5 clinger of a remora. Apparently, there aren't enough sharks around yet to hang out with that needs to try and steal Alila. How's that for 15 minutes into your first ocean dive? Now, we're going to round out day 1 of diving with just a few short clips in real time of some of the other wildlife that were swimming around, some that was hiding out. And of course, I need to prove it was actually me behind the camera with the obligatory selfie before we surface for the day. In between dive days, we spent one day snorkeling in the national park that is the Holchan Marine Reserve. Being that we are mostly at the surface, with a little bit of free diving, the colors are a lot more vibrant here, and so is the wildlife, with it being a lot more of what most people hope to see. From the moment we hop in the water, we're greeted by a sizable turtle who is clearly not bothered by us. We then have a series of different types of rays that are native to the area. First, we see a southern stingray, stirred from hiding, and while we've all seen them circling in the zoo, the effortless glide in the open water is even more stunning. Then, we come across a spotted eagle ray just flying along, and while this one is 30 feet down, we also saw several of them jumping out of the water throughout the trip. We even saw that they travel in families. We had several encounters with barracuda, which, while intimidating to look at up close, are really quite calm and beautiful when they're not on the hunt. We then got some time to play around with the guides who were showing us the area, learning some of the tricks they've picked up over the years. And then we were on our way out of the reserve, where we checked in once more with our turtle friend before moving on to our next site. The next site will be just a brief visit to what's called Shark and Ray Alley, where the nurse and reef sharks have become accustomed to the local fishers dropping the cuttings at the end of the day where they can feast. But as long as you're outside that feeding circle, they just couldn't care less that you're swimming with them. But let's get back to the additional wildlife we saw on our second deep day. Now this dive starts with what looks like an animatronic puppet, but it's a real moray eel. Looks everything like the picture books show, and I always thought that was fake, but here it is. Then we have another barracuda, this time from a different perspective. Still just as beautiful, but is then interrupted by another shark who seems to be saying, "Hey, pay attention to me instead." And that kind of became a theme on day 2 here, with several of them just getting up in our business like a lonely little puppy. And unfortunately, here's where I started to have a little trouble with my camera. Apparently I bought some bad batteries that had swollen pretty bad, and it shut down early. But I was able to get a few pictures of Alila and I together before we lost the chance. And while our dive days and the honeymoon-iversary to Belize wound down, we realized this really is only the beginning of our adventures together. As we walk into town, COVID masks in hand to get some dinner before we fly home, we're already planning our next adventure.